Hello musicians, welcome back. My name is buckydurddle and I'm doing another video tutorial today on VCV Rack, the open source modular synthesis DAW digital audio workstation. Now we have a lot of fantastic modules that we can look at here, all these open source modules that can do wonderful music, do wonderful things, but some of them are quite complicated and they take quite a bit of figuring out in order to see what really makes them tick. So today I'm doing a tutorial on Frozen Wasteland's BPM LFO. So you can see it here, BPM LFO. Now I'm going to, before I get started, I'm going to go over some of the stuff that we see here already. But I want to just remind you that Frozen Wasteland, you've heard me talk about before, because Frozen Wasteland makes this wonderful LFO here that I use a lot called the Lisa U LFO. And this is one you should check out if you haven't already. It's a wonderful LFO for making really organic LFO signals. Oh, it's gorgeous. I love it. So this is also by Frozen Wasteland, so you might want to check that one out too. So, but today we are doing it on the sister or brother LFO in Frozen Wasteland, and that's the BPM LFO. So let's have a look first at our setup so you can see what I'm running and how it's running. On the far right here, you'll see that we have our audio interface, which I have running here, and I have multiple inputs, left and right, coming from the mix on my mixer here, which is the fundamentals mixer, and this is my main volume here. And you can hear we're getting a signal from our VCO, and the VCO is coming from our sine wave from the VCO is coming into the input, and the VCO we're using is fundamentals VCO1. It's also being connected to, as you see, BPM LFO, which is the star of the show today. I also have BPM LFO connected to the scope, and you guys know I love my scopes. They really let us see what's going on as well as here, so this will help us visualize what's actually going on, so we can, we can experiment more and have better knowledge about what's actually going on in our sound, in our setup. I have an LFO down here at the bottom, which I'm going to use in a little while. This is a Fundamentals LFO 1. I'm also using AS Modules BPM clock, and I'll demonstrate why I'm using that in a few minutes. And I also have this one here, which is Aldkin's momentary on buttons. I like this guy. Now, this is got a lot of on buttons, and I haven't done a tutorial on this because it's quite simple, and there's probably no reason for me to do a tutorial on this one. But it's on buttons, it's momentary buttons. So a momentary button means that when you push it and hold it, it's on, and when you let it go, it goes off. So that's a momentary switch. So I'm using that as well. So I'll show you that in a minute now. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to zoom in so you can see our BPM LFO a little clearer. Okay, so here we go. Now let's have a look at the interface first of all. Let's start at the bottom. This outputs 4 different types of waves. We have a sine wave, a triangle wave, sawtooth wave, and a square wave. There's no pulse width modulation here, but that's okay. So that's what we have. Those are the waves that are available to us. And you can see on our scope, I'm outputting a sine wave right now. I can switch it over to my triangle wave and my saw wave, which you'll see there. And we have a square. So you can see that one. So that our scope shows all those. And isn't that nice to have a scope to give us all those views? Now, I'm going to initialize this just to make sure I'm in the, here we go. I'm at the starting point for all of you as well. Now, let's move up a little further. I'm going to skip this row right here because I'm going to connect that in a second. Our switches as we go across here. The first, we have unidirectional, unipolar, and bipolar. So when we switch between these, you can see on the scope what actually happens. So unipolar means that it's on one side, it's on the positive side of our graph. So it stays above the center line. It's a unipolar wave. Bipolar wave, of course, goes negative and positive. Now, we are seeing that in our scope, but let's have a listen to what that sounds like. I'll turn my volume up a little on my mixer so we can hear what that sounds like. Now, I have my VCO turned down in its frequency a little because it can get really high fast, and that can be a bit annoying. So this is a bipolar waveform. If I go to unipolar, it's going to get quite high. So you can see it going, the frequencies it's choosing now as it goes up and down through its cycle, goes from 0 up to the max and down again. So so there you go. So the control voltage is all positive control voltage. Again, bipolar is the negative and positive. Okay, so that's that. Now, I'm going to turn my volume down again on my mixer. And now let's go back to the next switch. We have pause and free. Okay, so before I get to that guy, let's plug in our clock. Actually, no, before I do the clock, let's do our switches. I'm gonna take a momentary switch. I'll take it off the bottom here, and I'll put it into hold. Okay, so right now, the hold, this button right here, gate and momentary, this is connected to the hold input right here. And watch when I hit the button and hold it, you can see, look, it stays there. And then when I let it go, or I hit it again, actually it's asking me to hit it twice, so it's when I do a gate, you have to hit it once and it holds it, hit it again, and it continues on its path. Okay, hit it once, hit it twice. Now let's move over and turn up our volume a little so we see what that sounds like. I go back again. Okay, so here I go hitting it once and again. Once and again. Oh, it's really low frequency, you couldn't hear that. And again. Okay, now the reason for that, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my mixer, and now actually I'm going to leave it where it is. Going back and forth is a little bit of a pain. So, okay, so I'll move it so we can go back and forth this way. So now, the Frozen Wasteland gate and momentary switch that we see right here, think about this switch here. This switch is momentary, I said earlier. And with a momentary switch, when you hold it down, I'm holding my mouse button down right now, it stays red, it stays on. And then when I let go, it turns off. So if I make this switch here, switch to momentary, well then what's going to happen is, I'm going to turn my volume up a little. If I switch it to momentary, and now, watch, I'll hold my mouse button down, and now I'll let go in 3, 2, 1, let go. See, it continues on its path. So as soon as I let go, it will continue on its path again. You see that? So that means that if we have a trigger versus a gate, it will do different things. So, you know, if I hold it, you know, depending on the type of trigger signal we put into it, we're going to get different results. Now, I'm not giving you musical examples of how you can use this. You need to take the tech that I'm giving you and then figure out how you can use it in your music. So that's what that does. So if you have a sequencer that's putting out triggers, you might be able to come up with some interesting ways to use it. Okay, now, the center button here to switch pause and free. Right now, with it in pause situation, when I hold it, it stays. And it'll stay there as long as I want. And then when I let it go, it continues on its way. See, right now it's like, you know, it's about 3 o'clock, a little past 3 o'clock. And if I let go, it continues on. Now, watch what happens when I switch it to free and hit the button again. It continues cycling, but the sound stays still. So we try again. See, so the waveform, the cycle of the waveform continues on its way, but it grabs one. It holds on the frequency that was at when we hit the button. So that free and pause will give you different musical results, of course. So that's something for you to think about. Now, let me turn this down a little bit more. Okay, so, and you could see on the graph when I was doing that as well. If I hold it, and you can see if I'm just hitting it, I'm punching it every now and then, you can see that this waveform continues on its cycle. Okay, but I think you understand that now. So that's that. That is the unipolar, bipolar, pause, free, and gate and momentary. Okay, now let's move up to, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot reset. Now what reset does, I'll take another cable up to the reset. What reset does is it resets the cycle at the starting point. It resets your waveform at the starting point. So if you just watch, I'm going to hit it now. See, it starts it over. If you hit it over and over, see, it starts it over and over. That's all reset does. Now that can be very useful. There are certain times when you want to be like beginning of cycle, end of cycle. You want to make sure that the waveform is at the 0 position, and reset is going to do that for you. It's going to put it right at 0, right at start. So that's what reset does. Okay, and that of course can be controlled from any kind of device. All kinds of control voltage can control that. Okay, let's move on. The cool thing I didn't talk to you about is this cool interface in the middle. You got this circling graphic, and like the Lisa U, it's a really cool graphic, you know. And I like the way that Frozen Wasteland gives thoughts to how how their LFOs look. So it's pretty cool. I like it. I like it a lot. Now let's move over to clock right here. We have hold. We just saw that. We have reset. Now we have clock. Now let me get this guy out of the way. I have AS BPM clock, and I love this clock. I've used this a lot. You've seen me use this many times. Now, so what we do here with this one, we have it's just a metronome. It gives us a time. So it's 120 it's set at. So if I hit run, it will run at 120. Now let me just get my volume turned up a little bit again. So now it's cycling at 120. So, and of course I can go faster. I can go slower. So there you go. Now I'm going to turn my volume down a little bit more. My frequency down a little bit more. Now, what is this up here? So what we're going to do a little math now. We have times 1. So this means that whatever the clock signal is coming in at, its times 1 will be the output of the LFO. If I rotate this dial a little bit, this dial right here, I rotate that a little to the right. Now it's multiplying 66 times 1.5. Okay? And if I go to this guy here, now you see that? So it's 112. So actually let me get a number back down here that you guys can easily follow. If I set my clock at 50, okay, so and if I just reset this to 1, so this is 50. So this is the beats per minute on this cycle is 50. So if I go up a little bit, there you go, now it's 75, because 1.5 times 50 is 75. And then if I go to this, now that's beating 100. That's beating 100. And again, if I go up again, 4, you know. And look over at our scope. So this is 13 times 50, 11 times 50. So you can get some really fast cycling happening here. But it's very accurate too, you know. So that's what that does. And I don't want to deafen you here, so let me turn this down a little. Turn this down a little, and then I'm going to turn this up all the way. Look at that, times 64. 32, 16. So it goes down to 1. Then what happens? Well, look, we're going divided by 1.5. And we go down a little further and look at our scope. See, remember I love my scopes. Look at this. This is 50 divided by 3. And 50 divided by 4. It's about 12.5, I think. So it's 12.5 hertz, or well, cycles. Yeah, it's 12.5 cycles per minute. So you go down, it'll go really slow, 11. So it goes way down to divided by 64. So pretty cool. Now that's all very exciting, and I really like that because it lets us really play with our times. But now we have our LFO 1 down here at the bottom. Check this guy out, LFO 1. What are we going to do with this guy? So, well, if I take my, let me disconnect my clock, And see, once you disconnect the clock, it stays. It keeps the tempo that it had. So it's staying at 50. You can sometimes, I like that. Sometimes it gets a little confused. Before I go on to that, I want to show you one thing. Let me take my clock, my momentary here. Watch, if I hit my button, if I go click, click, and it takes the tempo that I'm tapping. So if I tap a tempo like this, if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, tap, 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 tap. See the tempo? It's exactly what I just tapped. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. See, it taps the tapping of the momentary. If you connect it to the clock, it will establish a tempo for the cycles, and it will keep it. So it will maintain that tempo. So that's really cool. I like that a lot. I mean, as a musician, I mean, that's something I could really use. So now, but let's play with this a little more. If I take, let's say I keep my 50, I'll put my clock back in again, on beats, clock, and it'll establish itself. Okay, so now it's 50. So now I'm going to take, so the clock is telling this to do a 50 cycles per minute. So now I'm going to take my sine wave out, and I'm going to go into this guy. This guy here is going to control this, the division of the clock. So now if I, and this tells me how much of it will take it. Now it's doing some wild stuff. See, because what's happening now is this LFO is, the LFO control voltage is controlling how the division is changed. Okay, and like if I've got a pretty fast frequency. If I can slow my frequency down, you can see it changing this quite slowly now. Well, if I crank this up a little, now let's just look at what that looks like on the scope. So if I go over and I show on the scope, the pink line is my LFO, this gray LFO, the fundamentals LFO, and you can see that when it goes down at the bottom of the cycle, this division alteration is happening very slowly, and as it reaches the top of its cycle, the division alteration goes really fast. So let's turn this up even higher, and it'll be even more dramatic. See, so as I turn this dial here up a little higher, this controls how much the LFO, the fundamentals LFO, is controlling the division. So you can see my purple, the pink line, when it reaches the top, it's at the high frequency, it's making the division change a lot. And when it goes to the bottom of the cycle, when it's a lower frequency, a lower voltage, then it's making this number, the division number, change quite little. So let's have some fun with this. So if I turn this way up to the top, see, we're getting some cool little effects. Now let's turn the frequency up on the LFO. You see, we're getting some really cool effects. Let's slow this down a little. I mean, I like that. I think that's pretty cool stuff, you know. And look what's happening in our scope. It's pretty cool stuff, and you can actually see at the top of the pink thing, the frequency, the change, not the times this, you know, it's the frequency of the LFO or BPM LFO changes. So pretty cool stuff. I'm going to go over here, and if you change the frequency on our VCO, you get different effects too. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now, let's play with this a little more. Let's take, instead of a sine wave, let's take a saw wave. Now look at our scope. So you can get some nice little effects out of that. And if we speed up our sine wave, wait for it to come back up again. It's so long. Okay, so anyway, it's sometimes these unpredictable. Sometimes these unpredictable. I'm listening as I'm talking. So you can see what's happening here, you know. It's really cool. It's really, really cool. Okay, so so that's that. I'm going to, let me see if let's review now what we covered today. I'm going to turn down my volume a little bit because this sounds so cool. It's distracting me because I'm thinking about things I'd like to use in my own music. Okay, let's just review. This is Frozen Wasteland's BPM clock, BPM LFO, sorry. Down to bottom here we have sine wave, triangle wave, saw, and square we can use. We have a clock input right here, which right now we have going from BPM clock, but if we wanted to, we could actually control our clock by tapping on our momentary switch. And that would give us even some funkier results. And you can see over in our scope, it's going crazy here. Or you can just leave it here on our BPM clock by AS modules. We have a reset right here, which I'd like to see a reset button, but we don't have a reset button. But we can also switch it up, hook it to a momentary, which we are doing down here at the bottom, and that triggers a reset. We have hold, and the hold is connected to both pause, free, gate, and momentary. And if I connect my momentary switch to that, it will turn on and off the cycles of our LFO. Now, and you can play with that. And where I've got this running off another LFO, it's getting really crazy. I don't know what the results would be as we do this. I'd have to listen to it and see what's going on to kind of reverse engineer why we're getting sounds we're getting once we have so many things hanging off this module. So those are those three. Pause would pause the cycle as you hit the momentary switch. Free would let the cycle continue, but hold the sample and hold. Basically, the sample rate that you're, the frequency rate that you're at as soon as you hit the momentary. Anyway, we went over that. Up at top here, we got our division. The division is control with this dial here, which we can change the division of the input clock. We can also control the division by using an LFO or something else. And we also have here, this affects how much change takes place in this LFO, in the division by the external LFO. And I didn't say, if you go down past the center line, it goes into the divisions as well. Where if the above goes into the times is the multiplication, division is below with the dial. So that's something you can play with as well. So there you go. That is Frozen Wasteland's BPM LFO. I love Frozen Wasteland stuff. It seems to have such a good sense of humor, I find, their LFOs. So I love them. So play with it. If you have any music using this LFO, I'd love to hear it. Send me a link. I'd love to hear it. You can connect with me in the comments of this tutorial, or you can get me on utopian.io's Discord channel. I am the community manager for video tutorials in utopian.io, so I would love to hear your thoughts on this and other types of tutorials, so be sure to connect with me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching, and if you do enjoy this, be sure to upvote. If you don't, be sure to downvote. Whatever you feel is acceptable. I'm okay with that. Let me know how you feel, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch it. Okay, thank you, and I'll see you next time.